My name is Nova Reyes, 28 years old from San Francisco, California. I thought my family's secrets died with my uncle, until a blood-stained journal and a whispered invitation dragged me beneath San Francisco's elite. Into a secret society built on power, betrayal, and sacrifice. Now, they want me to join. But I have my own plan, to burn them from the inside out. This isn't just a story about legacy. It's about revenge in the shadows. If you love stories filled with secrets, betrayal, and revenge, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a drop. Comment below, would you expose your own family if they were hiding something this dark? I was already suspicious before I opened the envelope. It had no stamp, no return address, just pressed into the crack of my apartment door like it had been slid there by someone who didn't want to be seen. Red wax sealed the flap, imprinted with a crescent sun. Elegant. Heavy. Wrong. Inside, a single line written in ornate black ink, "You're ready now. Midnight. The Hamilton Vault. Come alone." I stared at it for a long time, heart beating like a war drum in my chest. I hadn't heard the name Hamilton Vault since I was a kid, eavesdropping on hushed conversations between my parents and people I never saw twice. The vault was a private club carved beneath the stone foundations of Nob Hill, one of San Francisco's oldest districts. It was supposedly built during the gold rush, but no one really talked about what happened behind its polished brass doors. Rumors floated around: elite rituals, money laundering, underground auctions. A place where power didn't just gather, it whispered. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 6 months. Not since I dropped out of Stanford Law. They called it a disgrace. I called it breathing for the first time in years, so why now? Why the invitation? And why did it feel like it was waiting for me? I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just wore black and slipped into the fog-slicked streets at 11:45 p.m., following the directions etched into memory from childhood. The vault's entrance was hidden beneath a defunct trolley station, bricked up and forgotten by most. But as I approached, a side door opened without a sound. A man in a velvet blazer stood in the shadows, holding a lantern. "Nova Reyes," he said. Not a question, I nodded. He stepped aside and motioned me in. "Welcome back." The hallway was narrow and cold, carved from granite and smelling faintly of wax and old stone. I counted 15 steps before the walls widened, revealing a domed room lit by iron chandeliers. Candles flickered in the glass, casting long shadows against the walls. There were people there, maybe 20, maybe more, cloaked in black with gold pendants hanging around their necks. And at the center of them stood someone I never expected to see, my mother. Her silver hair was pinned back, her face serene and unreadable. She didn't look surprised. "She's arrived," she said, voice echoing off the walls. "The bloodline remains unbroken." I froze. What is this? A man I recognized from childhood, Judge Cashin Holt, stepped forward and handed me a pendant shaped like a crescent swallowing the sun. "This is your inheritance," he said. "The Ecliptic awaits." I didn't answer, not yet, but my hands were already closing around the pendant, and deep down, something told me there was no going back. They didn't clap when I entered. No warm greetings, no smiles. Just silence, thick and deliberate, as I stood in the center of the room with the weight of that gold pendant in my hand. My mother didn't blink. My father emerged from the back of the circle, dressed like the others in black, his expression unreadable. I hadn't seen him in nearly a year. "You kept her away too long," he said to my mother, not looking at me. "But she's here now. That's what matters." "What matters," she replied softly, "is that she chooses." I turned to them. "Chooses what?" A tall man with a silver-tipped cane stepped forward. Judge Holt again. He circled me slowly, like a professor inspecting a specimen. "The Ecliptic is not a club," he began. "It is a lineage. A shield. A sword. You were born into this, Nova. 3 generations of Reyes have bled for this city's power structure. Your uncle Mateo died for it." That last name, Mateo, shattered the stillness inside me. I hadn't heard anyone speak of him in years. He didn't die in a car accident, I said. Did he? My father's jaw tensed. My mother looked away. No, Holt said calmly. He tried to run. Tried to take things that didn't belong to him. And he paid the price. I stepped back. You killed him. No, my father said at last, voice colder than I remembered. He was offered a choice. The same one we're giving you. My heart pounded. The room was a tomb and I was the body they were preparing to bury in velvet and ritual. You expect me to join after telling me that? I laughed, but it was hollow. You expect me to take this pendant and what, chant under candlelight? You misunderstand, my mother said, stepping closer. This isn't a religion. It's infrastructure. You walk down Market Street, you see tech giants, venture capitalists, politicians. Our members built their empires with what the Ecliptic gave them. And the cost? She smiled sadly. Always the same. Loyalty. Silence. Precision. I looked around the room. Some faces I recognized, an art dealer, a senator, a man who'd once been splashed across headlines for a real estate scandal that somehow disappeared overnight. It wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a living, breathing machine. And my blood was part of its engine. Why now? I asked. Because the family's blood must continue, my father said. And you've proven you don't belong to the world outside anymore. Something in me twisted. Rage, fear. Hunger. They thought they were pulling me in, but all I could think about was what Mateo must have felt in his final moments, betrayed by the people who should have protected him. I slipped the pendant over my neck, forcing a smile. Fine, I said. Let's play. They thought I was surrendering, but I wasn't. I was infiltrating. The ceremony took place in the vault's lower chamber, beneath the domed room where I first saw their faces. The stairs leading down were narrow, candlelit, and ancient. Carved symbols lined the stone walls. Etched by hands long dead. I counted each step like I might one day need to climb them in reverse fast. While running for my life, Judge Holt led the procession. My parents walked behind me like sentinels. Silent. Composed. Watching. The chamber at the bottom was colder, darker. The air smelled like burnt herbs and parchment. In the center stood a black marble altar. Carved into its surface was the symbol I now wore around my neck, the crescent swallowing the sun. Place your hand, Holt instructed, and speak the vow. My fingertips met the marble. It was icy, like touching the absence of everything. He began reciting the words. I was to repeat them. I hesitated only once, when the vow shifted from loyalty to silence. To sacrifice, if called to give blood, I shall not refuse. If called to erase memory, I shall not hesitate. If called to destroy, I shall ask only, how soon. I forced myself to echo it. Word for word. Tone for tone, not because I believed it, but because they needed to believe me. When I finished, Holt sliced the edge of my palm with a ceremonial blade. It was swift and shallow, but still stung. He pressed my hand to a black book, binding my blood into their ledger. You are now keeper level, he said. You will begin observing transactions, rituals, and inner functions. I nodded, blinking past the sting, past the metallic taste of fear in my throat. I didn't flinch, because this was just the beginning. That night, back in my apartment, I bandaged my hand and opened the journal I'd stolen from my Uncle Mateo's belongings when I was 17. My parents had tried to burn everything after his death, but I'd kept one thing, a leather-bound notebook he hid behind a false panel in his closet. Most of it had been indecipherable back then. But now, after standing in that chamber, I understood. The references to the root. The sketches of symbols. The coded names of members. He had planned to dismantle them too, he just didn't make it far enough. I flipped to the final page, his last entry. The ink was smudged, but the words were clear. You can't kill a system. But you can infect it. Become the glitch. Let them crown you, then poison the throne. I closed the journal, heart pounding. I knew what I had to do, become one of them. Rise through the ranks. Learn their codes, their rituals, their crimes, then bring the whole damn thing down, not for glory, not even for justice, but for Matteo, and for every life they destroyed behind closed doors. Matteo's journal was more than a record, it was a roadmap, soaked in paranoia and brilliance. For 3 nights, I pored over every page, surrounded by dim lamplight and the ever-present fog that pressed against my apartment windows like ghosts trying to get in. The journal was written in a blend of Spanish, ciphers, and Ecliptic code, a language that only made sense now that I'd seen their world firsthand. He'd been one of them. That much was clear. Matteo Reyes had risen to the order's seraph tier, which gave him access to the financial inner sanctum. Offshore accounts. Bribery ledgers. Sacrificial assets, that's where he snapped. In one entry, dated 15 years ago, he wrote, "I believed we were protectors. But we are parasites. We don't balance power, we bend it until it breaks. I saw a child's life bartered for a patent. I saw a woman's silence bought with her father's debt. We are not guardians. We are harvesters." Every word shook me. I remembered him as warm, the only adult who spoke to me like I had a brain. He once told me, "Never accept power you didn't ask for." At the time, I thought he meant grades or awards. Now I knew, he meant the ecliptic. Later in the journal, his tone changed. More clipped. Frantic. He began listing names, code names, initials, transaction dates. But what chilled me most was the section labeled the root. According to Matteo, the root was not just a metaphor, it was an actual archive hidden beneath the oldest part of San Francisco. A vault beneath a vault. A physical tomb for secrets that could not be digitized. Evidence. Contracts. Tapes, and he had found its location. They meet there once a decade, he wrote. To cleanse what cannot be burned. But the truth waits in stone and ash. I will bring it into the light. The entry ended with a drawing, a crude map of the Muni tunnels beneath the city, with a red mark under an abandoned civic center platform. He circled it 3 times, the next page was blank, and the next, no final words. No farewell. I knew what that meant, he had made his move. And they had silenced him. My hands trembled as I shut the journal. Rage bubbled under my skin, but I couldn't afford to feel it yet. Not until I was ready. Not until I was deeper. They thought they buried Matteo beneath lies and whispers, but his truth survived, and now, it lived with me. I looked in the mirror and didn't see the Nova they raised. Not the obedient daughter. Not the law student. I saw something else, a weapon. They trained me in silence. Now I would speak. The deeper I went, the easier it became to lie. The ecliptic fed on certainty, on bloodlines, and blind allegiance. I gave them all of it. With a smile, 3 weeks after my oath, I was promoted to curator status, a mid-tier rank just high enough to glimpse the inner workings without being noticed. I attended closed-door meetings in the Presidio, midnight gatherings at Seacliff Mansions, and even a masquerade under the Palace of Fine Arts. I shook hands with billionaires. Toasted with senators. They looked at me like I was legacy. A born vessel. No one suspected I was quietly gathering everything they tried to keep buried. I had a simple system. I wore a recording pin in the lapel of my ceremonial coat. Every interaction, every whispered deal, every name that dropped like a blade, I caught it all. When I returned home, I uploaded the files to a hidden drive Soleil helped me secure. My old friend and now co-conspirator, Soleil E., had once been one of their targets. A coder turned whistleblower, she'd tried to expose a defense contract fraud tied to Ecliptic shell firms. They destroyed her career. I was her only pro bono case before I left law school. Now she was my ghost in the machine. Every system has a heartbeat, she'd told me, scanning the files. We just need to find the moment it skips. Meanwhile, I smiled through every ritual. I quoted the Ecliptic scriptures. I even started writing mock pledges in their tone just to practice staying in character, the hardest part. Pretending with my parents, my mother, Isadora, seemed almost proud. She invited me to dinners with founding families. She talked to me in riddles, as if assuming I already knew too much. My father was colder, watchful. I could feel him measuring me at every moment, looking for cracks, but the more I gave them what they wanted, the more they relaxed. And that's when I started copying documents from their private collection. One evening, after a cleansing ritual held in a Pacific Heights estate, I lingered behind while the others retired to the parlor. I found the locked drawer in the host's study, just like Matteo described in his journal. The key was still taped behind a portrait of a robed ancestor. Inside, I found account transfers, property deeds signed under shell corporations, lists of liquidated assets, people, likely. Dates. Sums. One document in particular stopped my breath. It was a ledger titled, M. Reyes // final disposition / cleared. Cleared. Like he was a debt. I snapped a photo. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I swallowed the rage, because they thought they were playing chess, but I was the flame licking under the board. The shadow archive wasn't a single file. It was a labyrinth of hidden folders, dead links, encrypted logs, everything Soleil and I had spent the last month quietly extracting from Ecliptic terminals, physical ledgers, and secure briefcases disguised as family heirlooms. We worked in fragments, usually at 2 a.m., inside Soleil's tiny apartment above a shuttered bookstore in the Tenderloin. She kept the blinds closed and her VPN wrapped tighter than Fort Knox. Who the hell uses triple-layer cold storage for meeting minutes? She muttered one night, sweat glinting along her temple as she decrypted another archive. It's like they're building a religion with a body count. I stared at the screen, heart pounding as the folder unzipped. Root Tier 7 Confidential Reyes _M Archive _Theta, Matteo's name. I leaned closer. Open that. Right now. Inside were redacted reports, payment authorizations, and most disturbingly, a contract labeled Containment Resolution Protocol, (MR). It was signed by 3 people, my father, Judge Holt, and someone named Cassidy Vale. I recognized the last name immediately. Vale was one of the founding Ecliptic bloodlines. Old San Francisco wealth. Their family funded half the city's art museums, and quietly owned most of the board of supervisors. Jesus, I whispered. They sanctioned his death like it was paperwork. Soleil leaned back, rubbing her eyes. He didn't just get silenced, Nova. They turned him into a lesson. We dug deeper. Hidden among financial audits were ledgers tying the order to everything from corporate espionage to mysterious land seizures in Chinatown and the Outer Sunset. Some of it connected to cleansings, a euphemism, we guessed, for forced disappearances or legal ruin, and then we found it, the route coordinates. A geotag buried inside a backup server log that led to an abandoned Muni tunnel beneath the old Civic Center line. Matteo was right, I said, staring at the blinking coordinates. The route is real. Soleil didn't speak for a long time. She just stared at the files we'd uncovered. At the names. The signatures. The faces behind polished reputations and carefully worded press releases. Finally, she said, this goes beyond revenge. I nodded. It's justice. And it's survival. We backed everything up to a ghost drive with a timed release. If anything happened to either of us, accident, arrest, or vanishing, it would auto-upload the entire archive to 6 major news outlets and an international watchdog group. No more secrets, no more safety. I went home that night feeling like I was carrying a bomb beneath my ribs. But for the first time, the fear wasn't paralyzing, it was fuel. The Ecliptic thought they had buried Matteo beneath candles and code, but I had unearthed him, and now I had proof. The invitation arrived in black vellum, sealed with red wax. This time, it wasn't anonymous. You are summoned. Coit Tower. Equinox Summit. Midnight. Signed, Cassidy Vale. The Equinox Summit was the Order's most sacred ritual, held only once every 10 years, for Inner Circle members only. I shouldn't have been invited. But they had plans for me now. A promotion, perhaps. Or something darker. Soleil had her doubts. This is bait, she warned, zipping a burner drive into my coat lining. But if they don't know what we've got, you might just survive the night. The base of Coit Tower was closed to the public, but the Order had access to everything. A concealed hatch behind the mosaic panels opened into a private elevator that plunged deep into the hillside. When the doors parted, I stepped into a stone cathedral laced with gold veins and flickering firelight. There were fewer than 30 of them, dressed in ceremonial black, pendants glinting like teeth. My parents stood near the altar. Judge Holt. Cassidy Vale. All the architects of San Francisco's invisible empire. They looked at me not with suspicion, but pride. She carries herself with power now, Vale said, examining me like a prize. The bloodline sharpens. I stepped forward, heart pounding. Before you crown me, I said, I have something to offer. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small silver device. Soleil's creation. Pressing the button, I triggered a speaker embedded in the room's sound system, hacked the night before. The voice that poured through the chamber was Mateo's. I believed in the Order once. But belief fades when power corrupts. If you're hearing this, they tried to erase me. But secrets rot, and I am the smell in their walls. Gasps echoed. My mother turned pale. Holt's hands clenched. Then came the recordings, bribes. Death orders, confessions whispered behind closed doors. Proof. Undeniable. I looked them in the eye as it played. You made him a ghost, I said. But I made him louder. Cassidy Vale's voice cut through the noise. You've signed your death. No, I said, calm now. You've signed your downfall. At that moment, Soleil triggered the upload remotely. All of it, every file, every ledger, every name, was sent to global media outlets, government agencies, and digital activists. The shadow archive was no longer a secret. I expected rage. Screaming. Chaos. What I got was silence, because they knew it was over. Judge Holt turned and walked out without a word. Others followed. My mother stared at me like I was a stranger. My father didn't even look back. Within 48 hours, the news broke, a secret society exposed. Arrests issued. Resignations rippled through tech firms, politics, and philanthropic boards. The Ecliptic Order, 3 centuries old, fractured like glass, and I became a name they whispered with fear and awe, Nova Reyes. The one who burned the tower from the inside. The fall didn't come all at once. It came in waves, louder than I expected, but slower, like a machine coughing itself to death. The headlines lit up every screen across San Francisco. Secret society exposed beneath Coit Tower. Reyes, Vale, Holt named in widespread corruption probe, daughter of powerful family linked to whistleblower leak. I sat in my apartment, the curtains drawn tight, as the city devoured the truth I'd given it. My parents were arrested within 48 hours. Judge Holt turned himself in 2 days later. Cassidy Vale disappeared off the grid entirely. Soleil traced a jet to Zurich. She said Vale was probably buried in someone else's passport by now. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just watched it all collapse, like I was watching my own bones break from a distance. The Reyes estate in Pacific Heights was seized by federal authorities. Our family foundation was shut down. Donations revoked. Buildings renamed. My last name became radioactive. Former classmates unfollowed me. Former friends ghosted. I was the hero, the traitor, the cautionary tale. Justice, it turned out, had no room for legacy. Soleil stayed with me for a while. We survived off takeout and cold silence. One night, as rain tapped against the window, she said, "You did it. It's over." I didn't answer right away. No, I finally whispered. It's never over. Because what I destroyed wasn't just a society, it was my history. My lineage. My only family, and for all the rot they built their world on, part of me still wanted someone to look me in the eye and say, we were wrong, but they never would. My mother refused a plea deal. She claimed she was framed. My father didn't even speak at his arraignment. To them, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was the infection that ruined the bloodline. The city changed too. A few new names rose in the vacuum. Some of the Ecliptic's surviving members quietly reorganized under different umbrellas, non-profits, think tanks, charity alliances. The old power died loudly. But the hunger that birthed it? That lived on. In new suits. New shadows, I walk the streets now like a ghost in my own life. No more black dresses or gold pendants. No more marble chambers, just Nova. Alone, but free, one morning, I returned to Matteo's grave for the first time in years. There was no headstone, just the flat bronze marker the family had placed for show. I knelt beside it and whispered, "They won't rise again." Not like before. Wind stirred the leaves. A low fog hung over the grass like breath holding in the cold. I placed a single coin on the marker, a symbol Soleil and I had chosen for those we couldn't save. A tribute. A promise, and as I walked away, I didn't look back. Ashes can't be rebuilt, only remembered. They think I disappeared. Let them, after the trials, after the headlines dulled and the world moved on. I vanished into the fog like the ghost they always feared I'd become. No forwarding address. No interviews. No book deals. Just gone. There were whispers, of course. That Nova Reyes fled the country. That I was killed in retaliation. That I had changed my name and now lived somewhere quiet, Montana, maybe. Or Maine, but the truth was simpler. I became the thing the Ecliptic couldn't control. I stayed in San Francisco, hiding in plain sight. A different haircut. Cash jobs. An apartment under an alias. I watched the city rebuild its story, how quickly it replaced scandal with spectacle. The next tech boom. The next mayoral election. The next distraction, but I didn't forget, and I didn't stop. With Soleil's help, I created something new, a digital mirror of the Ecliptic's methods. Surveillance, yes. But this time for exposure, not control. Every name that tried to crawl out of the wreckage and rebuild the old machine, I saw them. I tracked their accounts, their meetings, their whispers in private forums. They called themselves the Ember Circle now, cute, but fire. I learned, spreads fastest through dry roots. One by one, I leaked just enough. A connection here. A contract there. No big explosions. Just slow erosion. Just enough rot to keep them afraid. To remind them someone was still watching. They'd built a kingdom on silence. Now I made them live in noise. Sometimes, I missed the girl I used to be. The law student. The daughter. The niece. The one who thought justice was a courtroom and family was forever, but that version of me burned with the rest of it. Now, I was something else. An eclipse doesn't just darken the sun, it reveals what hides behind it. I visit Matteo's grave once a year. Always at night. Always in shadow. I leave a coin and a slip of paper with just one word, still. Still fighting, still watching, still here. No monuments will be built for me. No statues. No chapters in textbooks. I'm the name people delete from their emails when they start getting nervous, and that's how I want it, because myths don't die. They haunt. They warn, and one day, if the embers of the Ecliptic ever try to ignite again, they'll remember the woman who turned fire to ash, not for vengeance. But for every voice they tried to silence, for every Matteo, and maybe for the girl I once was, too. Thanks for listening. If this story gripped you like it did me, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a twist. What would you have done if your family was part of a secret society? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And remember, some betrayals don't end in blood, they end in silence.